All right. Hey everyone, I'm here with Tommy Von Voigt today. This you may not know what an honor this is, but wow, we are blessed to have you on today. Um, this is my first Zoom call. I don't know if technically this recording is gonna look. This may be the worst idea I've ever had. This may be a terrible.
Oh, I'm the guinea pig. Fantastic.
Yeah. So oh, here's the gallery view. Should we do that?
I've
Maybe.
got you on gallery view. Yeah.
Okay. I hopefully it's recording that. In any case, Tommy, been in the music industry for decades. You know, you've been in so many bands across time. Your latest is the Tommy Von Voigt. You could almost call it the Tommy Von Voigt experience. Uh, but the album is Invincible. Came out what, last year? What
Yeah.
well,
Actually, just a year ago. Just 1 year ago. Yeah.
1 year ago.
Yeah.
And man, to just so much praise, to so much acclaim. You did a show for it at
Arlene's Grocery. Yeah.
Arlene's
In
Grocery,
July. Yeah.
and I didn't get to go.
I know.
Oh, I was so mad.
I know.
Didn't get to go to that.
Were you like
I
in
wanna.
Virginia at the time or something? Or
It was just I had friends in town. It was something where I had something planned for weeks and weeks, and then you, like a week before, you were like, "Hey, I'm doing a show," and I was like, "You idiot! You could have consulted me." So
I,
I want to get something out of the way immediately,
yes.
and I put out a list of the best albums of 2019, and Invincible was number one. And I know immediately what this makes me look like.
Very cool.
Yeah, I know. I'm like awesome. But it makes me look. It looks like nepotism, right? It looks like, hey, my best friend's album came out last year. It's number one. It's great. But here's the thing. When I made the video for the albums of 2019, I was like, I don't do that. I don't do that for my friends. I'm not that nice. And I was just talking to my friend Zach about your album, and I told him I was doing this interview. And him and I, we dance to your record all the time. I mean, every time he comes over, we blast it. And he said, Tommy has no idea that the special treatment that his album is getting just because it's good, not at all because I'm your friend, you're my friend, whatever. Like, I literally think it was the number one record of last year. So I want to get that out of the way. This is not nepotism. I know a lot of bands, I know a lot of musicians, a lot of friends came out with albums this last year, etc. Yours, I actually think, was the best. So congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It's hard for anyone to hear that and be like, oh yes, well of course, yes. It's just
Yeah.
Thank you. It means a lot, man.
Yeah, but you also put like so much work, and we're gonna hear about that.
Well,
So
yeah.
this is also not just a run-of-the-mill Tommy record.
No.
I mean, this is like a life project, right?
It really is, man. Like all I'd ever done for, like, I don't know, the 20 years now that I've been making music, I've always done, like, I started doing hardcore punk and pop punk and then moved to rock and hard rock and all that stuff. And it'd always been basically, your typical rock band arrangement, power chords, da 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 da. I never tried messing with anything with synthesizers at all. This was an experiment in so many different ways. I didn't know if I was gonna be able to pull this off, and it took, as you know, it took 3 years to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and like, not 3 years working every now and then. You like 3 years like working every week on it, right?
Working every week, every weekend. I would wake up in the morning to go to work, and I'd get up early, and I'd just sit at my computer, and I'd be messing with drum programming. I was like, okay, I gotta go catch the J train, and I go to work, and I'd have shit in my head, and I'd be like, okay, ooh, this idea, and I'll hum it into my phone, and I'll race to get home, and go right back downstairs to the computer, and like, spend like 5 hours programming, bass parts, and it just was nonstop. And each song that would go on for like a couple of months until I got things to the point where everything was layered up, and I felt like it stood on its own as a song. And then sometimes I would put a month of work into a song and then feel like it just wasn't going anywhere. Like, well, now I'm throwing this one away. And this just went on and on and on for months and months and months. And then that turned into years. And it was only supposed to take a year.
Right.
In fact, I don't know if people, I'm sure a lot of your friends are going to be watching this. If any of them know some of the backstory of when I started working on this, and you at the same time started working on, you wanted to do an album that was 80s influence too.
Right.
And it was like, well, let's have a competition. Who can put out the best 80s record? And in the course of time it took me to make this album, you put out like, I don't know, 7 records.
Yeah. I believe the number was 19.
It was 19 records, yeah.
In 3 years. Yeah, no, I mean, to think that I was ever competing against this album is a little funny now.
We were trying to do 2 different things, man. Like, you were trying to take influence from the 80s and make it your own thing, as we were talking about, like deconstructing it, put it back together and see what it can become. I was trying to create something where you really were like, wait, what year was this actually made? What's going on here?
Yeah.
It's 2 different kind of goals, I think, but both rooted in similar kind of influences in some regards.
Right. And I think that's always what I do with people. I'm always like, guess what decade this song came out in? And I know your song, and then they never go, last year. They never do. But yeah, no, I mean, the latest I got was like early 2000s. Was the latest.
The newest somebody thought it could have been made.
Yeah. Which, like, I mean, that's like someone trying to go back far enough, but like also thinking like, but I haven't heard it before, so it's not like the 80s, like I'd know what this is if it was the 80s, but yeah, so this, I'm glad that you said that, because again, about this record being a very specific project of yours, you were also going for a very specific sound. So part of the time was really chiseling out this very specific sound that you were going for.
Yeah, I really did. I was really honing in on like 80, I'd say 85, 86 to like 88 was the time period.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it right, like I felt like you had to, at least this is what worked for me, I had to imagine that not only did I have to write songs that were right for that style or right for that era. Like, you can't just write any old song and put a huge gated reverb on it and say it's 80s. It's not
right. Yeah.
Quite it. You have to write a song like an 80s song. And you also have to be limited in some regard by how the technology was going to limit people back then. Like, if you think about like dance pop and a lot of the stuff that's on my record, a lot of it's drum machines.
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays, obviously, with DAWs, we can do absolutely anything we could ever want with drum programming. Like, the sky's the limit. It's just a matter of how many late nights you want to have programming them. But back then, with budgets in mind, being in a big studio and working with a drum machine, there's only so much you could do. You're going to be repeating some drum breaks. You're going to be repeating some beats. There's going to be limitations to what your backing track will sound like based upon what the technology of the time was. And I had to kind of approach it thinking like, okay, I can't go too far because it's going to sound like more than they would have done back then. You know what I mean? Like, they would have run out of money at this point. Yeah. So I kind of had to have that on when I was making the songs, which was a different kind of experience, like to actually intentionally limit yourself to what you would have done in a time period.
Yeah. Which I think, I mean, do you feel like you thrive, especially when you're limiting yourself, or when you kind of feel limitless?
Um, if you feel
Like, are you
completely,
empowered by like an effects pedal that has like a million effects on it or something, or are you empowered by like, okay, I only have this stuff. Like, what can I do with that?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just saying, I'm going to just sit down and write whatever, and you have all of today's technology available to you with completely unlimited resources, then yeah, you could sit down and you could definitely write whatever. But if when I'm trying to do something, I'm trying to do something very, very, very specific, limiting myself in that regard, I think helps me focus on achieving that specific thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have gone through the whole creative process with that kind of self-imposed, those parameters imposed upon myself, maybe I might have still made a catchy record, but it wouldn't have sounded like the record I wanted to make. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so here's some I want to get some trivia from you. What was the first song on the record that you wrote?
The very first one was Invincible, the title track.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about the writing of Invincible.
The song. Well, I was trying to do something like an '86 Madonna songs from that era, and so I was trying to get into that mindset. But I also wanted to have the message be really strong. Um, and the way that came to me is that little bell hook in the beginning of the song. It came to me while I was waiting for the J train one like freezing morning, and like it grew from there. Like by the end of the day, I had the chorus. Like I knew it was going to be, I am invincible, and I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? What are you invincible to? Like, what makes you invincible? And that whole thing kind of just crystallized into being about, sending a message back to you in your younger self and telling you that you have the strength to overcome everything that you're dealing with. If you have a rough home life, if you're being bullied or anything like that, you're invincible. You have the power to get through it. And that just, once I had the message, like the whole song just exploded out of me. And that's kind of how that came into being. And once I had that first song, I was like, wow, maybe I can write an '80s song. Let's see if I can write like 280 songs or 380 songs that are like a single. And then that just became this insane thing where it's like, no, I guess I'm doing an album.
So yeah, so question on that. Is there like a unifying theme to the record that ties into that, being invincible and like, really trying to inspire to people to just, go out and get what's theirs, I guess?
I mean, the album really, I don't want to say it's a concept album because like, you know what I mean? Like everyone's like, it's a concept album, blah, 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 blah. But it accidentally became a concept album. I made a real conscious effort. I wanted every song to have some kind of actual real significance. Um, like you could really dive into the lyrics. I mean, I hope that people can really dive into the lyrics on this and really discover that there's a lot of weight, there's a lot of substance there, and the whole record ended up becoming autobiographical because of that. So it kind of tells a story of me from being very young and being so idealistic and then trying to become like some artistic success, and then as you get older, you know dealing with the reality of things not working out the way you wanted them to, and at the same time dealing with the reality of like the music industry that you thought was a thing is just not that thing anymore. um, that's what Rock and Roll is Dead is about.
Mm.
It's basically about saying, you know what, it's all over. The industry I thought I was going to become a part of somehow is not even a thing anymore. But you know what? Screw it. It's okay. Could have been a star. Obviously, is about turning 40 and realizing, wow, this didn't work at all, did it?
Your album has the sound and attitude. I guess I don't know if attitude is something an album can have, but it has the sound and the make of like the makeup of an album that it seems like was a okay, you know what? I failed and like to get everything that I wanted, and when I tried playing the world's game.
Yeah.
So forget it. I'm just gonna make this little thing for myself. And you know, it just has like it's totally self-indulgent,
Oh,
but
completely.
in
Yeah.
a way that is it's I mean, it's obviously nostalgic, but it's more than nostalgia. It's fulfillment. It's like fulfilling a need in yourself. And I mean, it is apparent, you know, from track one. But I mean, it was apparent in Could Have Been a Star. You know,
Yeah.
I could have been a star and I wasn't. So now I might as well just do what I've always wanted to do, you know?
I mean, that's really, a lot of that is really, yeah. Um, the record really is wish fulfillment. It is unbelievably self-indulgent. But I knew that going into it. It was like, I don't want to make it seem like, you know, prior musical projects were me trying to put out, you know, an Ariana Grande record and it didn't quite work. You know, I was never really trying to be the current hot thing, but I was always at least trying to do something that I thought people might want to buy. Like during the pop punk days when we were doing the Warped Tour and everything like that, you know, we were putting out the pop punk skate punk thing. We were like, what if this gets traction? This is what the kids are listening to, da da da. And nothing ever worked. And so I decided to do this project, which I never even really fully expected that I'd even make a full album out of, let alone put out an album. And it was, let's make the music that's in my heart, the music I've always loved since I was really, really little, the stuff that I always come back to and listen to, and I don't feel like anyone's really trying to do. And I'll just do it on my terms, and I'll go 110%, no compromises. It's going to be exactly the sound in my head. And yeah, so it's this unbelievably self-indulgent project, and it turned out to be the most popular thing I've ever done.
Yeah, no, it is. Your self-indulgent and my self-indulgent are very different things.
Really different things. Yeah.
My self-indulgent is like downbeat, 15 minutes long,
20
like
per minute.
yeah, like every song is like a lot of space and like slow, and you know, like you take any other song and super slow it down. That's my self-indulgent. Your self-indulgent is, oh yeah, I'm gonna make the danciest pop songs for you to like party to. It's literally a dance album. Hard.
I know. It's really funny. My idea of self-indulgent is like, what if somebody was trying to write a ¡1 smash hit single for Whitney Houston in 1988? Like, that's not really self-indulgent, man, but I guess for me it is.
But at the same time, there is, listening to your album, just such an awareness that like he is making the music that he loved to listen to as a kid. You know, like
This is 100% sounds, yeah.
Yeah. So you and I, we've been friends for what, 12 years now?
Oh God, it's been a while, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, we often talk about the 80s, like 80s music and 90s music, and how polar opposite they are. And you know, a friend of mine used to say that the 80s was the party and the 90s was the hangover. And that basically kind of sums up your position of like, you generally have a sort of contempt for the 90s trends in rock music, and like a huge appreciation and deep love for the pop music of the 80s. So I was wondering if you could talk about your favorite 90s album.
My favorite 90s album.
Yeah.
Oh man, I really wish that you had given me at least a half an hour to think about that. Okay. Let me think. Favorite 90s album. Does it have to be an album that sounds like 90s? It's come out in the 90s.
It can't be Amy Grant. Like
so
her pop album.
Yeah, it can't be Def Leppard's Adrenalize album or anything.
Yeah, it's gotta sound like it came out of
it sound like it came out of the 90s. You know, it's in fairness, it's really hard for me to think of a favorite 90s album because I don't really listen to any full albums from the 90s. But I can definitely sit here and rattle off some songs I think are fantastic from that decade.
Okay,
Um,
let's do it.
okay. All right, so we're gonna talk 90s. You are a sneaky.
Yeah, no, I figured if I like, hey, we're gonna talk about the '90s, you'd be like, yeah, no, we're not gonna do that, and I'd be like, yeah, I feel like we're gonna do it.
No, let's dance. Let's dance. You know what I like a lot from the 90s? I like a lot of the first half of the decade, the R&B and the hip hop that came out. Some incredible records.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What's that one song? Jade, Don't Walk Away. Unbelievable. Absolutely slams. There's some great R&B. And Vogue put out some killer records. A lot of the early 90s hip hop singles were fantastic. I mean, obviously, like, you know, House of Pain, Jump Around.
Yeah.
Kicks ass. Ground with 360 Degrees. You know, a lot of the stuff off the first big record. You know, there's obviously The Chronic came out in the early 90s. I mean, to me, that's like the mid 80s to the mid 90s to me is like the golden era of the hip hop. Yeah. I think it's just incredible. So like so much stuff came out in the early 90s from hip hop and R&B that's just mind blowing. That to me, my personal opinion, hip hop and R&B was kicking rock's ass in the early 90s. But that's just my own personal opinion. I know a lot of people would argue and they would, you know, they would have a very valid case, but that's just my own personal taste.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we'll go into your comfort zone. Give me one underrated album from the 80s. So think of something that doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Doesn't get the credit it deserves. I'm gonna say the second Dead or Alive. No, the third Dead or Alive record. Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know. Came out in '87. I know you're not a huge Dead or Alive fan, but that record is phenomenal. It absolutely smokes. Just packed with catchy dance floor slammers, man. It's an amazing record.
Bangers and mash as
my yes. Well, it's British, man. It's bangers. Yeah, apropos.
Okay, yeah, Dead or Alive. I'm glad you mentioned Dead or Alive because Dead or Alive fans should especially check out your album Invincible.
For multiple reasons. I don't know if you were going to mention it, but I should probably mention it. Not only is there a huge influence from their work, especially their second and third record, but pretty deep into the project after trying for, I don't know, about probably a year and a half to emulate the sounds of those records, those productions from like PWL from the mid to late 80s. I ended up actually networking with Phil Harding, the engineer and producer who worked on the Dead or Alive records, and ended up bringing him into the project, and had a great working relationship with the guy. And it was really surreal sending him over tracks to do remixes on that were the result of me trying to make my stuff sound like his sounds. So
unreal.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, okay, so there's one underrated one. Now let's go overrated. What is an overrated 80s album? Gets way too much credit.
Ooh. I'll tell you what, why don't you tell me what you think yours would be while I'm trying to think of what mine might be.
Okay. In overrated, I mean, anything by Journey for me is overrated. So yeah, I'd have to throw them under the bus, I feel like.
Oh man. Oh, that's cold, man. That's cold.
It's too inspiring.
Inspiring?
I came into music as an emo kid, man. So when I listen to Journey, it's like, stop. Come on. There's no way you're that happy. There's no way.
That is hilarious. I listened to some of those really catchy Journey songs, and I'm like, I hear you, man.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I feel seen. Like
they're like thespians. They're like loud, like they're like the people who are singing on the subway. Like that you've got a confidence that I think you're worse for having.
You know what, dude? Just for you, follow-up record to Invincible is going to have Journey influence on it, man. And I
No,
got
I'm sure.
Trying to think of an overrated record.
Throw a hot take on me. What is an unpopular Tommy opinion
Of the 80s?
album?
Of the what? Of the 80s?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I you know what? I'll tell you what. I do get really exhausted reading critics' best of lists of the 80s.
Uh-huh.
You know, Rolling Stone will put out like, you know, blah, 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 the 500 albums you have to listen to before you die and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, a lot of the stuff they'll put on there from the 80s is just like the saddest crap they can possibly find. You're like, you need to listen to this Replacements record. They were all really drunk when they made it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, fucking, all right, I get it. You just hate Joy. Like, it's just like every one of those critics lists is like, oh, this sounds like it might be too much fun. We can't like that. You know, let's go after this Husker Du record. That's the best of the 80s. Like, the hell out of here. Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm looking for. HBO. Okay. So I'll stop bothering you for hot takes.
It's all right.
I do want to bother you for one. You know, this is an album recommendation channel, so this whole interview is essentially a recommendation for your album. But I want to get some album recommendations from the great Tommy Von Voigt. And you told me before we started recording that all your records are in storage and you only have 2 LPs with you. So
I only have 2, yeah, because of the general quarantine. As anyone who's not watching this in New York City, we are both in New York City, not in the same room, obviously.
Yeah.
Just because of what date it is, but
right. Yeah, we didn't even mention that.
Yeah, we are appearing live via satellite to each other because of social distancing, because of the general.
Well, you're live via tape. Video.
I'm live via VHS.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can't actually be near each other because of cooties, and we're all trying to do the right thing here in New York City and practice social distancing. But as such, all of my records are in storage, and I'm at home, and I only have 2 LPs here. So you hit me up for you told me let's do a recommendation, and I only have 2, so I'm going to recommend both of them because they're the ones I have. So the first up, we have Twisted Sister Rough Cuts. Okay, now this is what they put out before they had a big record deal, and it only has 4 songs on it. It has What You Don't Know, Shoot 'Em Down, Under the Blade, and their cover of Leader of the Pack. And you have not heard Leader of the Pack until you've heard Twisted Sister. Dude, I mean, just think about it. It's like, hey, D, are you really going out with her?
Oh my God.
It's amazing. You don't even know. It's amazing. So my first album recommendation is Twisted Sister Rough Cuts, which is incredibly hard to find. And I think you'd be lucky to find this at a record fair or on eBay. And my other recommendation is going to be actually not the one that I would have recommended, but this is the one I just happen to have here. And that is the first Belinda Carlisle solo album. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we all know that the one true Belinda Carlisle solo album is Heaven on Earth.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Just Heaven's Place on Earth, dude. But what I have here is the first one. And this one's got Mad About You, which is a killer song.
Oh, for sure.
It's a solid pop record. And it was a great, this was a great first solo outing for her after the Go-Go's went bust. And it's a really fun listen. So those are the 2 LPs I actually physically have access to. And coincidentally, those are the ones I'm going to recommend. So
why are those 2 the only ones you have?
I wish the story was more interesting, but basically a couple months ago.
They'd be like, hey, this is my lucky record.
These are my lucky records. As long as I'm holding these, if I'm
Yeah.
no further than 10 feet away from these albums, No, there was a record fair in Astoria a couple months back, and I went with a buddy of mine, Paul Bertolino, and I bought both of those, brought them home, and put them on the shelf. And then I still have not brought my record collection over, so those are the ones I've got here, and that's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna recommend two because you got to recommend two.
Do it, man. Do it.
Let me grab my second one. Okay, first one, and you're gonna love this. Classics.
Yes.
Oh.
Guilty. Oh God, I love that.
Okay, so first of all, this band name has got to be one of the worst band names of all time.
Oh, it's a dreadful band name.
Classics Nouveau.
Yeah.
With two, not one, but two X's.
Yes.
If you had like a band name Scrabble, it would be worth a shit ton of points, I suppose. Look at them though. Wow.
I know. Nosferatu put together a synth pop band.
Nosferatu, yeah. Oh, and the lead single, Guilty.
Oh.
The music video is amazing. Classic Nouveau was introduced to me by Tommy Von Voigt right here. And I found it at a record store for like $5. Oh my gosh. Absolutely amazing album. Anything you want to add to Classics Nouveau?
I mean, just that it's incredible. And I think that in the music video for Guilty, I haven't watched it in a while, but I think he's playing this same guitar.
Oh, wow.
I think he's got one of these in the music video. I think that's what he's playing.
Oh, man.
The other thing I want to... What?
We didn't even plan that.
No, we didn't plan it. We didn't plan that at all. And the other thing I'd want to add is after, I told you about that record and that song and everything, and you were like, what? And then like out of nowhere, you sent me a photo that you had bought that record. And I was like, yeah, so mad. I was asking you, how's the rest of the record? And then you said,
I said, the carpet matches the drapes. Meaning the rest of the album is as good as
Guilty. Yeah.
Which that should just be a phrase now. Like,
honestly, that's the best record review anyone's ever gonna get.
The carpet matches the drapes.
Really, there's no finer album review that I've ever heard in my life than that one.
Hey, well, I said the same thing about your record, man. Because I showed what was the song? Here I am, but she doesn't want to be my girl. Oh my gosh. When I showed that song to my friend Zach, and he was like, is this just like a one-hit wonder? And I said, no, the rest of the album is so good. And then I said, believe me, the carpet matches the drapes. So you got the same review.
Right. Oh, and dude, about that song, there is a remix album that's going to be coming out, which is understandably delayed right now because obviously it's delayed right now.
Yeah.
But there is an alternate mix of that song, which has completely different instrumentation. The album version is the one that Phil Harding and his crew, PJS, Julian, and Simon did. But the alternate version that's going to be on the remix album is the New York mix, which sounds like a different song. I think you're going to dig it too.
Wow.
Yeah.
When's that coming out? Or you said it's just delayed?
Yeah, it was going to come out in March, but, some stuff happened.
Yeah, I wonder.
It's all ready to go. I just have to send it off to mastering. All the songs are done. I just got to get it mastered and put it out.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then vinyl. What are we going to get?
We are going to hopefully get vinyl. I've had more than one person ask for physical copies. People from all over the world are asking if they can buy it.
I'd buy it twice.
Well, there's 2 copies sold.
Yeah.
But speaking of vinyl, you got to give me your other album recommendation.
Yeah. So the other one, Amy Grant, Lead Me On. This is a worship record. And it's like, so this is between Amy Grant phases. So this is like,
well, she was fully like a full-on Christian artist, and then she became baby Amy Grant.
Right. she in the 80s was mostly famous for her worship songs and like these really epic, like overproduced like
Right.
worship albums. But then this is where she starts to go more towards pop music when she gets to
Hearts in Motion.
Hearts in Motion. Yeah.
Phenomenal album.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, from 91.
Yes.
And this is 89, so this is just before that. Lead Me On, oh my gosh, such a great single. And then some other great singles on here. There's a couple of songs that have some weird theology that are like, spilling in, that you get some like, I don't know if I'm gonna be singing that. But oh man, the way that the songs, they're great pop songs, like surprisingly great for let's not be this, it's not a genre that's known for great
Having
music.
incredible pop songs, but I don't know what it is. I don't know who she hooked up with for producers and songwriters in that period of time, but especially when she got to Hearts in Motion, like, God, that record just, you want to talk about perfect pop, like, jeez.
Yeah. No, I mean, Madonna level.
It really is. It really, truly is.
Which, have you seen Madonna Truth or Dare documentary?
No, and I know you recommended it, and I need to watch that next. It's on my list of things to watch.
Dude, unbelievably good.
Well, we were busy the other night watching Jaws 3D, so we didn't get a chance to watch Truth or Dare.
Yeah.
So you got to prioritize this stuff, man.
I don't know if that's a good priority though.
Do not be a hater.
Madonna. Madonna is. Wait, is that Jaws in 3D or Jaws 3D?
Jaws 3D in 3D.
Okay.
Yeah, it was originally going to be called Jaws 3 People Zero, and it was going to be a satire. But Spielberg found out about it and said, if you do that, I will never make another film for your studio ever again. And no one dared cross Steven Spielberg in the early 80s.
Dang.
So then they decided to make it a serious horror movie, and they didn't pull that off either.
Jaws 3 People Zero would be a great Tommy Von Voigt album title. I'm just going to give you that one right now.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. That's really
I want to use it. Okay, so before I let you go, let's get one more piece of Invincible trivia. What was the last song you recorded on the record?
The last song is
wrote.
The last song I wrote and recorded for it was One of the Beautiful Boys. And that one, which ended up being one of the hottest, most slamming tracks on the whole album. But it was the hardest one for me to get out of me. And that was because it fought me so much, because I was so like bound and determined to capture like 1986 era New York freestyle influence. Like I was like, it has to sound more New York. It doesn't sound New York enough. And it just drove me nuts for like 3 months. I played with the BPM for like a month and a half. It's like, now it's 117, now it's 115, now it's 118. What's the right BPM? I changed the kick drum pattern back and forth for like 3 weeks. It just fought me and fought me and fought me. It fought me so hard. I was like, I'm just going to put out a 7-song album and call it an EP. I was like, no, you got to do that one last song and make it a full album. And I finally landed it. It finally came together, and it's absolutely smokes. That one was really hard.
Man, yeah. I mean, you can tell that like tons of detail went into your record, and it's
so much
in a way that you often don't get. Like when you're just listening to something that's a guitar, bass, keyboard, and drums, it's like you can kind of just take for granted some of the skill involved or whatever.
Yeah.
Like then there's albums like yours where you actually are very aware every second, like, and then there's that little thing in the back, and then like all these layers, and like so much thought went into every second of this.
Yeah. Well, you know what kind of ended up causing that was I don't want to say insecurity, but perhaps this is kind of the correct word, adjacent. Like, because I'd always worked with rock band arrangements and arranging, you know, just guitar, bass, and drums and everything. I needed to make sure that these songs worked as songs with stacks of synthesizers, and I had to make sure that the synthesizers were doing emotionally, musically, what I would get out of like a rock song arrangement. And so I would just experiment with layers and layers and different sounds and textures, and having things in the background and things on top and all these things that come out of nowhere until it sounds like, yes, it works. And then it would finally get to the point where it worked with just stacks of synthesizers. And then I would bring in the guitars, and it added that extra dimension on top of all that. So that's why there's just so much going on, and you can really dive into the record because of all that work and attention to detail. Because I was so obsessed with, it's like, it has to work, it has to stand on its own.
Yeah.
And it does.
To get synths and to get especially digital instruments to put like pound, you know, to like actually pack a punch the way that like a guitar amp can pack a punch is so difficult. It's so
you really have to put the work into it, man.
Yeah, and it's some of the difficulty of that is not talked about as much as it should be.
No.
But yeah, I mean, producing like digital synthesizer music and making it sound like a rock album is very difficult to do.
It's difficult, and it's incredibly time consuming. And actually, on that note, when I first hatched the idea to even do this, I went and I spoke with this engineer in the Upper West Side, Alex Sterling. He's got a nice facility, and I was like, I'm looking to do this kind of project, and I want to have all these stacks of synthesizers and da 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 da. And like at a certain point in the conversation, he looked at me, and I'm paraphrasing at this point, but he stops me. He's like, "This will take you like $500,000 to make this album in a studio. You need to do this at home because of the amount of time it's going to take to program all this stuff out. Like, you cannot go into a recording studio cold and try to make a record like Invincible. You can't. It would cost you $500,000 to make that album because the amount of time to map everything out, it's not something that's practical.
Wow.
People don't realize that.
Yeah. No, I mean, the resources you need for this stuff, it's the way that months and months can go into 3 minutes, you know, is
it can. And that's what's so maddening when you hear people, and it's not as bad nowadays because the 80s had a huge resurgence and haven't gone away. They're like basically back and here to stay.
Yeah.
But for a while, people would be so dismissive of so much stuff from that era, especially the programmed keyboard-driven dance pop synth music. And it's like I never was dismissive of it. I always loved it and always respected it. But especially now, having actually made an album like that myself, knowing what it takes to do this.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap. You listen to the stuff that I'm basically paying like tribute to. You listen to the stuff that was actually done back then. You're like, oh my God, what it must have taken to cut that track.
And then, I mean, you think of like Rick rolling, and
right.
that's one that it's like never going to give you I mean, that is such an amazing song.
It's an incredible song. And people don't even know the amount of work that went into that song.
Yeah. But it's a punchline. You know, like you can't play it without someone be like, oh, you Rick rolled me. You know, like.
Which is hilarious because I just think it's an amazing song.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, yeah, no, it's a good one. And your song, the one I was just singing earlier. That
Doesn't Want to Be My Girl. Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of that song. I mean, yeah, that's my favorite song from Invincible, by the way.
Thank you.
So the bass line is just so good, and so danceable. I mean, that is like Madonna level to me. The danceable. Yeah, that one could have been a star. What was the one that actually surprised me the most. Yeah, this is great video right now. I'm like looking something up on my phone.
You can edit it out.
I won't though. I'm gonna keep it in. Why give myself a break?
People need to see the realness, man.
Yeah, they need to see.
Was it All I Can Do?
All I Can Do. Oh my God.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that you really dug that one.
Can do. I think I listed that as the best song of last year.
That song, I'm really so proud of that song, man.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny when you make a record, at least for me anyway, like you and your friends and all the people that I get like emails and Facebook messages from people all around the world, people that English isn't even their first language, and they're sending me messages. We love the Tommy Von Voigt record, blah 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 blah. And like I listen to it, and all I hear is flaws. I hear myself singing. You know, I don't hear the record the same way like everyone else gets to hear it. But I will say that All I Can Do, that one I can listen to, and I can say, damn, ooh, I can't find anything wrong with this one at all.
All I Can Do, I think more than any other song on the album, captures the pathos, the passion of the project.
Yeah.
It captures that, like, yeah, no, this means everything to me. And it comes through hard. And so props to you for making that incredible song. And thanks for coming and coming on, like not you didn't go anywhere for this.
I'm literally in bed right now, man.
Yeah, you're playing your guitar. Yeah, thanks for joining me for this. It's always fun to hang out with you. So
absolutely, man.
Glad we got some quarantine time.
Quarantine time, and at some point when the world returns to normal, we can actually see each other in the real world again.
Right. So, all right, Tommy. Well, thanks for coming on. Everyone listen to Invincible. Clearly, we're both big fans.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks.